Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit like, follow, or subscribe on the platform that you're listening to us on. You can also check out my work at the loudest.com on the planet, knac.com, for exclusive hard rock and heavy metal interviews, live show coverage, album reviews, and more. My guest for episode 206 is indie Southern blues solo artist MADISON GALLOWAY. MADISON recently released her self-titled sophomore album on June 28th through her own imprint, Purple Bee Records. She recently concluded her first UK tour, opening up for the Commoners. This interview took place a couple of days before she took off for that tour. And here's MADISON GALLOWAY to tell you more about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about MADISON GALLOWAY, how would you describe your music to me?
I would say it's a sort of rootsy, rocky, blues kind of blend, kind of Southern rocky. I'm a big fan of Led Zeppelin and the other, the greats of the 60s and 70s, but also a lot of new music as well. So I kind of try and blend a few different, styles and eras.
Well, I think your influences come through on your latest album. It's your second album. It's self-titled. It came out on June 28th through Purple Bee Records. Now, I noticed that you've been releasing singles for a little while from 22 to 24, almost pretty much all the songs on the album. Was a full album always the end game here, or was it just like response to the singles saying, I got to put this all together?
Yeah, so I did have the goal of doing a full album. So I had done the first two singles from the album in 2022, and those were sort of our, how do I explain? Like, we did those two to kind of put them out to everybody and say, hey, I'm going to do a whole record. Here's kind of the vibe. And I did a crowdfund to support making the album. So that was kind of our two songs to be able to say, hey, this is kind of what you're, gonna get if you help me make this album. And then I also use those in like grant applications as well. And yeah, so from then I did know I wanted to record a full album, but I hadn't yet. I had just done those two. But then the rest of the album we did do all at the same time, but we just did that rollout of the out of the singles.
A lot of great songs on the album. You've released them all as singles. I usually talk to artists to give me a little insight on some of the singles, but we'll have to pick a couple of my favorites since you've released most of them. So let's talk with sort of the inspiration between Open Your Eyes. It seems pretty relevant in today's society for sure.
Yeah, so that was a fun one because I liked writing all of them, but this one has bit of more of a story behind the writing process of it. So it was a co-write between myself and a writer that I've worked a lot with, especially on this album. Like a lot of the songs are written with him. His name is Jason Hamer, and he was actually based out of Arizona when we were writing together. So we would just write over like a Zoom or a FaceTime and some sort of video call and have like a Google Doc open so we could both type into it at the same time. Because obviously I wasn't flying to Arizona every time we wanted to write, though I wish I could have. So we were writing together and we had this co-write set up and we didn't know really what to write about that day. We usually start the co-writes just saying, with a little like chat and see, if we had any ideas, if either of us had been working on anything or thinking about anything in particular. And so we were just talking and neither of us really had anything, like any ideas that day. We were just kind of, I don't know, it was one of those days. And so we, just kept talking about this and that. And we would come back to and be like, oh, did we think of anything to write about? And we're like, not really. We talked some more. And then finally, it had been quite a while. And we're like, well, how about we just do this? So I have this like really big bookshelf in my room and it's just full of books. And I said, what if I just go to my bookshelf? I'm going to pick a book at random and we'll just randomly find a line in there, and then that's going to be our inspiration. So we said, okay, let's try it. And so I went over to the bookshelf and I kind of just ran my hand along the spines and got Jason to tell me when to stop. So it was a collaborative effort here to randomly pick something. And so we landed on, the book was The Golden Compass. And then you did the same thing with all the pages, and then finally down to the line. And the line we ended up on was, they sell their strength. That was the line. And we're like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. And we kind of sat with that for a minute. And then I said, wait. What if we said they sell their lies to whoever pays? And I think maybe to whoever pays might have been part of the original full line. But anyway, so we changed strength to lies, and we thought that was kind of cool. And then that was what threw us onto this whole sort of trajectory of this kind of political, social, environmental song. Just open your eyes.
Another great song on the album I really enjoyed was Hate Birds, kind of a play on words with love birds. So if you want to talk a little bit about the inspiration of that.
Yeah, well, I had to give a little cheer, because I had a bunch of people when I first recorded the song and first started kind of showing some people, and they were like, "Why do you hate birds, Madison?" And I was like, I don't hate birds. What do you mean? Birds are great. Why? What? And they're like, hate birds. And I was like, no, not hate birds. Hate birds, like love birds, but hate birds. Anyway, so I'm glad that you got it. But yeah, that was one that I wrote with Selby Copeland, and she's a writer in Toronto. Yeah, I don't know how that one exactly came about. I think we wanted to write like sort of, I guess, like angry, not angry per se, but kind of more like anthem-y kind of breakup song, I guess. And I don't remember who it was or if it was just the combination of both of us, but somehow Hate Birds came out of it, and we thought that was kind of a funny way to look at a couple that's broken up, because when they start out and they're all like lovey-dovey, and everyone's like, oh, look at those love birds, and they're like, oh, well, that's kind of funny if the relationship kind of falls apart, and then they're hate birds. So we just kind of rolled with it from there.
Well, if it wasn't for bad relationships, there wouldn't be so many great songs.
Yeah, for sure. I hadn't done a whole lot of co-writing on my first. Well, I hadn't done any co-writing on my EP and my Moon and Mercury album, my sort of debut full length. That was the first time I had had a co-written song on it, and I had one song on there that I co-wrote with Ron Hawkins of Lowest of the Low, and I was kind of, I don't know, I think for a while I was a little hesitant about co-writing. And I've heard like some other artists feel similar about it too. They're like, oh, like I don't want to write with somebody else, because it is personal, and you have to be sort of open and vulnerable with other people to write about something. So I think I was just like a little hesitant and nervous about it, and so I didn't really do any co-writing except for a song here or there with a couple people. And so, but it was during COVID that Jason had actually reached out to me just online. He had found my live streams and was like, hey, I'm a writer. I'd love to write a tune with you. And I decided to just, to try it out and step out of my comfort zone. And I'm really happy that I did, because I think we've written some cool songs together. And now I love co-writing. So. Well,
you mentioned, writing music is sort of a personal thing. And now when you're collaborating with other people, are you finding out that we all kind of deal with the same things, and we all kind of view these things a bit similar, and that we're all pretty much humans?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I guess I hadn't really totally thought about it like that, I guess, but no, I think maybe that's like once you get into it and you are writing, and you get to know somebody through writing with them, and then you're more comfortable with it, then it's like, yeah, you both are pulling from experiences that you both have, even though you're writing about, you're writing one song together about this, this one theme, I guess. And I'm going to pull, the things that I'm adding to it is from my experience, which is going to be different than, whoever I'm writing with. But they're going to put the things in from their experience, but they're, similar enough. Even though they're different experiences, they are, the same. And you can just write something together about those two different things, and it's really one thing. And then anybody who listens to it is going to, connect it to their own experiences, which I guess is the really cool thing about songs and music. And that's, I guess, kind of why we listen to music. So.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the song Tides that close out the album. Great song. Why don't you tell me the inspiration behind that one?
Sure. So that one actually was a solo write. And that was like a 3 a.m. sort of write. It was super late. I was just by myself, sitting on the floor with my guitar. And I think I had sort of had this idea, soon to when I had ended up writing it. I wrote it in like February 2020, I think. And I had, I don't know. It was a really interesting one because it just kind of flowed out very, I don't want to say effortlessly, but it was just really flowed. Like some songs, you kind of have to like pull and pry with them a little bit sometimes. And this one just kind of really flowed out. And, I don't know. It was a cool write, I think. And it was a personal sort of song, and sort of on this idea. So Tides is like the concept behind it is this sort of, I don't know, it's hard to explain, this metaphor, I guess, or analogy of the sea having this, sort of personifying the sea as this character. And it just kind of talks about like a journey and struggle with mental health, and as in the sea being the character who is, sort of going through this tumultuous kind of journey. And in the end, it, has like a positive light to it. And that's kind of the inspiration, I guess. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned your earlier influences from the 60s and 70s, and all those guys wrote about the sea or some analogy with the sea or metaphor with the sea.
Yeah. There are a lot of good water songs. Yeah.
So you got a great cover song on here from Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit. You actually made this song interesting for me because I find the original completely boring.
Oh, well, I'm glad that I could add something to it that you enjoyed.
Is this something that has developed over time from your live sets? I know, like when people are starting out, they do a few covers into their original set and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a song that I had. I mean, I've known the song for years, but it was a song I started doing during my live streams. I think I had learned it because at the time I was doing a Psychedelic Sunday live stream series. I had done a whole bunch of different live stream series during COVID. I had a lot of fun with with the live streaming, and still do. But I had also run a Psychedelic Sunday series because I remember growing up listening to Q107 with my parents, and they did a Psychedelic Sunday show. And then they discontinued it, unfortunately. So I decided that I would do my own Psychedelic Sunday show when I was doing the live streaming. And so I think I had just, I had kept trying to find more songs to add to my set list that were, this sort of psychedelic vibe and era. And that was one of the, it was a pretty obvious choice to add in for the set. So I had started doing it, and I think it just ended up, I kept getting requested on my live streams. People seemed to enjoy the way I had done it, which was really cool. And when we were doing the album, I knew I wanted to do a cover or two for it. And so I had kind of compiled my own list of covers that I thought might be cool to do, and then I put it out to like my fan group on Facebook. I said, "Hey, I'm taking cover suggestions," and I had a massive, massive list. And so I just kept listening to them, and we kept narrowing it down. And this is one of the ones that made the short list, and obviously made the album. And yeah, I don't know. It was cool because when I did it on my live streams, obviously I didn't have all the, the whole production of what it was on the album. It was just me and my guitar. But when I started thinking about, these covers and, well, how would I do them in a recorded sense? Like, are there any that stand out to me in that way that might be really cool to record? And I thought that doing a White Rabbit could be really cool if we extended it. And I heard this just very sort of groovy, trippy, psychedelic outro where the guitar and a sitar were kind of calling back to each other and playing off of, each other's melodies and creating this kind of whole little world at the end of the song, I guess. And so that's what we ended up doing.
Have you gotten any feedback from any surviving members of Jefferson Airplane?
No, I haven't. But if anyone, wants to reach out to Grace Slick and share it, I would love to know her thoughts. That would be like, yeah, that would be the dream. That would be so cool. I'd love for her to hear it.
See what you have to do. You have to get your publicist to send it to her and be like, "Hey, can we get a quote for you from this?" And sometimes that works.
Okay, we'll try it.
So you recorded the album at Giant Studio, Lynx Music, and Milltown Sound. Was there a reason why it had to go from different studios? Was this a budgetary thing? Was this just a location thing?
Yeah, so we did, part of it was just availability. A big part of it, I guess, was availability. We did want to record our bed tracks with David Matta out of Giant Studios. And we just thought it would be a cool fit. And we being myself and my co-producer, Stacy Shopswitz. And so we wanted to go there, but he was actually going to Egypt shortly after we had started the project, which I guess we knew when we were sort of booking it. But he was like, "Okay, I could do this week, but then I'm leaving." And so we were like, "Okay, well, let's do our bed tracks with David, and then we will go to another studio for our vocal." And so my friend, Gavin MacLeod, who's a great musician as well, he was like, "Oh, well, you should just come by Milltown." He like works there, and his friend and guitarist in his band does a lot of engineering there. So we ended up working with him, Patrick Mills, and we did a bunch of our vocal there. And Lynx was just kind of like a couple things, just because we needed a little bit of extra studio time to do. Like we tracked, I think like 2 songs of keys there, and like a couple like backup vocal things, just sort of in between some other studio days we had booked. And then we also went to RHC Music, which is Ross Hayes Citrullo's studio, and we did most of our keys there. I did do a few main vocals there as well, a bunch of backup vocal, some extra guitar layers, and yeah, everything else that we did on the album was pretty much done at Ross's place. And Ross is actually the guitarist in a band called The Commoners, who are out of Toronto. They're a great band, and yeah, so it was cool to work with Ross, and I've known him for years as well. And he actually produced, recorded, and mixed all the sort of the entirety of Open Your Eyes and The River, the first 2 singles we put out, and he mixed the entire album as well. So
did you have a particular backing band for this album, or was it more studio musicians and producers and stuff playing the instruments on the album?
Yeah, we had, so Jeremy Clennons was our drummer for the album, and Ben Healy did most of the lead guitar, with the exception of just a couple tunes that I had done a little bit of lead stuff on, but I'm definitely not as much of a lead player as Ben is. He's amazing. So he did most of the lead stuff, and then did some, like, we doubled up on some of the rhythm as well. And I had never worked with Ben or Jeremy before, so yeah, they're not like my regular band. I don't totally have like a band, changes, out people, every so often. So we decided to get, a couple of really great studio guys in there, who I'm sure I will, or at least I hope to work with again at some point, because they're both really awesome. And, and then for bass, we had Stacy Shopswitz, who was also co-producing the album with me. He was on bass for it.
So you're a completely independent artist. You mentioned earlier that the album was crowdfunded, and you also mentioned applying for grants and stuff like that. A lot of work going into that. Kind of distracts you from being a musician, no?
Yeah. There's a lot of business work then the sort of back end of, doing music that I think is sometimes a little bit overlooked by people until you're like right into it and you're like, whoa, there's so much to do, not just play guitar, which I would love to do. I would love to just sit and play guitar and write music and perform all the time. But there is a lot of work to do, especially with such a big project like doing an album, or right now we're about to leave on a tour tomorrow. So we are doing a ton of work to try and get ready for that and leave for that. So yes, there's lots of stuff to do outside of just playing guitar or writing music, which, I don't know I guess you're saying about it just being a distraction, and I don't know if it's so much a distraction, but it is a ton of stuff that has to be done. So I think sometimes the creative side can get pushed off a little bit. Definitely like when you're I was going to say when you're in the middle of a project, but I mean, a project like recording an album, it's like you're still getting to do, the artistic thing because you're making a record. But it's not like just like sitting and writing. But, it all sort of, I guess, it's sort of like in cycles because, before we were doing the album, I was doing a lot of co-writing and I was getting to do a lot of writing and be able to, slot in time for that. But just, trying to get this record out was such a huge project that it was like there was not any other writing going on, but we still got to be creative in the studio and do that, so that was cool.
And you mentioned the UK tour that starts tomorrow, July 19th. You're supporting the Commoners, that Jeremy worked on your album, right?
Sorry, Ross
worked on your album. You threw too many names out to me. There was no way.
I know that was a lot.
So you're also crowdfunding this one. You're investing a lot of your own money as well, and the I don't think people realize the cost for an independent artist to do a UK tour, or even sometimes a local tour. I mean, you're looking at $21,000 worth of expenses, and people don't consider what that breaks down to.
For sure, it is quite a lot of money to do, tours, or even the record was a lot too that I had invested into the thing. And if it wasn't for the crowdfund, and I did receive a grant from the Ontario Arts Council, which I'm really grateful for, both theirs and everyone who supported the crowdfunds help and support in the project. But yeah, if it wasn't for them and OAC, I probably wouldn't have been able to, not probably, I wouldn't have been able to make this record, at least at this time. So, you're right. It is a lot of money. And, this tour, is also, a lot too. But I guess, think about it as like an investment and, hope that by opening up for the Commoners, we'll be able to then go back with our own tour and, continue to sort of build the audience over there and be able to then at some point do a a profitable tour.
Is this your first real tour outside your local area?
Yes, yeah. So it's been, I think, even more work just because of that. It's like totally new to us. I've also never even traveled to Europe or the UK. So, even little things like, the power difference, and we're, just all these little things were like, oh yeah, shoot, the plugs aren't the same. And so, then I'm like buying like converters to be able to plug our stuff in, and, all those things. But, and then of course there's the bigger, tasks of booking it too. But, yeah, this is my first time going over there and doing like a real tour. Yeah.
The interview is probably not going to air until after the tour, but we'll just say it was fun and it was a great experience, and you hope to do it again, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
for sure.
who's your backing band over in the UK?
So I'll have my keyboardist Nick Hurst with me, and we're actually using a drummer out of the UK. His name's George Love, who's been highly recommended to me from both Ross and their label as well. So excited to work with him because, yeah, I've heard lots of good things about him, and he's a super talented drummer. So we'll be going a day early so we can have a little rehearsal with him before the first show, which is in London. And that'll be the band. It'll be me, Nick, and George. So we'll have a little trio.
So, as part of kind of your thanks to people that donate a certain amount of money for the tour, you're offering some gifts in return, digital tour posters, and kind of a hangout with you. You're doing sort of like a dinner before the show or after the show, and you're doing like these acoustic things out at like local parks. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, so we haven't quite announced the sort of like location and day that those will happen, but we will be doing yeah, I want to do a couple of like, yeah, like you said, like in the park, little like acoustic show hangout thing where, anyone in the area who has, contributed to that will send out the details, and they can come hang out and just get to like chat and play some tunes, do like a little sing along kind of, like kind of like a campfire without the campfire, because I don't think the park wants me to start a fire. Um, but yeah, and then we'll do some after the shows, kind of like little meet and greet hangout things, where because usually, we got to go eat food after a show. Anyway, so we're like, well, what about we just invite anybody who does the crowdfund to come eat with us? We thought it would be a fun way to, be able to meet and hang out with everybody. So, yeah, that is, yeah, one of the perks. And then, like you said, the tour poster as well. And then after a certain amount, I actually do have physical posters as well. So at a certain point, I'll give the actual poster to everybody as well.
You call these hangouts Mad Cat hangouts, or Mad Cat's what you call your fan club?
Yeah, so somebody had, well, I think how it came about is that some people will call me Mad for short, I guess like on the live streams. And I also really love cats. I have 2 cats. And so there's a lot of cat talk, I guess, on the streams and things. And also, like cool cats. So sometimes I would refer to, my fan friends as cats. So then we were trying to think of, we wanted to come up with something to be able to call a sort of group and anybody in it that was a bit more, I guess, unique and specific to my music versus just like cats or cool cats. So then, I don't know, we had kind of had a few different ideas, and then we had come up with the Mad Cats, and we're like, oh, because it's like my name, but then calling them cats, but I don't know. Anyway, so yes, that's what like my sort of fan friends are, and anybody in my fan group is kind of referred to as, and we have like the Mad Cat Club. So
in addition to monetary donations. Let's say somebody can't afford to support you monetarily. There's other ways to support you. They can share your music and your videos. They can follow you on social media. They can stream your music. You're pretty active on social media too. So I think these are kind of like little things that a lot of fans don't realize does help the artist beyond monetary stuff.
For sure. Yeah, I know. It is a huge help. Yeah, all of those things that you listed are greatly appreciated, and a bigger help than, yeah, like you said, a lot of people, I think, realize. So thank you to everybody who has been doing that, and will do that now because of that.
Now, when you come back from the UK, do you have plans to play gigs in your local area? I know you just did a bunch of them leading up to the UK tour.
Yeah, I think we do have a couple things in the works. One thing is that we would like to do a local CD release party, or a release show, a little bit further, but we might do a couple, like in a couple different locations. And so that's something that we're working on, but we don't have a date for that yet. But everyone stays tuned, because yeah, we might have a couple shows that pop up when we get back. And then there are a couple other things that are booked, and if anyone would like to check those out, you can find them on my website. But yeah, so that's kind of what's in the works, and there's a couple other shows I can't talk about yet because they're not confirmed or out. But yeah, we will be doing some more shows when we get back too.
Do you have sort of a home base venue at home? I feel like that might be Village Beer Garden.
Yeah, it is pretty close. That one, I have been doing a lot of shows there. We kind of did a bit of a residency out at the beer garden there. That's just in St. Jacobs, so it's like half an hour from my house. And yeah, it's a great little restaurant in St. Jacobs, nice outdoor patio. But for local venues, I think that yeah, the Fergus Grand Theater is kind of like in Fergus at least, is like our big music venue. And then we've got lots of pubs and smaller places around.
So you mentioned the origins of the name for the Mad Cats. What is the origins for the name of your label imprint, Purple Bee?
How did that come about? I had made that when I was doing my first record, or I'm sorry, my first full-length record, Moon and Mercury. And well, purple is my favorite color. I know that was why I went with purple. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of bees, I guess. I love like gardening and nature and things. So, and there is actually a purple bee. Like it does exist. There are purple bees out there, and I'm not sure how I ended up putting the two things together, but once I did, then yeah, I looked it up and I was like, oh, there's actually a purple bee. I had no idea. So, yeah, I just went with that. I had kept thinking of record, like a name to call sort of my record label when I was about to put out that album. And yeah, I don't know, that was just one of the names that came out, and I think I liked the best.
Your cats are going to be jealous you didn't make it about them too.
I know. You know what? I thought this past year, so the Mad Cat idea had come out, later. We had just, I think, started that like last year, maybe a little bit before that. And I'm like, oh, Mad Cat Records would have been cool too. But I didn't think about that yet. That hadn't come, into, that I hadn't thought of that idea at the time. So at the time it was Purple Bee Records.
Are you actively shopping your music to kind of bigger labels, or do you like having that independence of releasing the music when you want, recording the music when you want, kind of having total control of its distribution?
Yeah, I mean, it is nice being an independent artist for those reasons. It is also a lot of work to be an independent artist. I'm not, like you said, I'm not actively like shopping like my albums or just like art, I guess, to a label or labels right now. It's not something I'm against. So I possibly for this next record, maybe I would look into it more and see if there was like a, like a smaller label that I think might be cool to work with. But yeah, or maybe, something will just, fate will bring along the right label. But yeah, right at this moment, yeah, I'm not like actively seeking it out, but I'm open to the possibility.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, Madison. The new self-titled album is out now through Purple Bee Records. It sounds great. I wish you the best of luck with it, and I wish you the best of luck on the UK tour, and I hope it brings about greater and bigger things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show.
Once again, I want to thank Madison Galloway for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out her current self-titled album, out now through Purple Bee Records. Head over to your favorite streaming platform, take a listen to the album. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy, support the artist. For all things Madison Galloway, head over to her official website, madisongalloway.com. I also want to thank Brian Heeson of HBM Promotions for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. Discover your next favorite artist on the Rock is George.